Welcome back, my friends, to Harrison Public Library's installment of Book Buzz.
In loving memory of our friend and colleague, Lisa Ragano. Lisa was a wonderful, kind, and compassionate person, always willing to go the extra mile to help anyone. She made a huge impression on virtually every patron that ever set foot in our library, and also on her colleagues. Lisa and Giovanna started Book Buzz in 2018. The fun they had. Lisa had excellent reader's advisory skills. She was a great librarian. But first and foremost, she was a reader, and spent her life promoting reading as one of the most joyful experiences anyone can have. Lisa will be missed beyond measure. We would like to dedicate this episode of Book Buzz to our friend and colleague, Lisa Ragano.
Hi, and welcome to another edition of Book Buzz. I'm Bob Herster, and I'm a librarian at the West Harrison branch of the Harrison Public Library. And I'm here with my colleagues, Giovanna Fiorino Iannaccia and Kenji Kaneshiro. Giovanna is an adult programming and outreach librarian at the main branch in Harrison, and Kenji is a library assistant there. Today, we're coming to you from both locations to talk about some books we think you will enjoy. And Kenji's going to go first. Kenji?
Sure. Thanks, Bob. So I'll be talking about Kazuo Ishiguro's Clara and the Sun. And it's a science fiction novel that makes an emotional appeal about what it is to be human in the context of artificial intelligence. The first-person narrative is provided by the eponymous Clara, an artificial friend or robot designed for youth companionship. She is eventually purchased to care for Josie, a sick child living in relative isolation with her mother and housekeeper. From storefront to prairie home, Clara's worldview remains narrow, but deepens through her relationship with Josie, whose happiness is tied to those around her in a way that also obligates Clara to their felicity. Making Josie happy means making her mother happy, and that includes some suspicious requests for Clara to emulate Josie's mannerisms. When Josie's disease worsens, Clara looks for solutions where none exist and takes increasingly radical action. To the story's credit and detriment, it speculates on the future in ways that are sharpened by the pandemic we're living in. Josie's education is conducted remotely and is not exclusive to her because of her disease. Social gatherings of children are discussed in prescribed ways designed to prepare them for college in the absence of grade schools as we know them. Clara herself, as an artificial friend, is a solution to loneliness and social aptitude for children. Much of the novel is also static in terms of location, with the majority of the story taking place in Josie's home. So if you're looking for a book to escape the pandemic, this isn't it. Similarly, if the sci-fi elements are your main interest, the novel only ever whiffs of the outside world instead of ruminating on it. Colonies of unemployed workers displaced by machines, genetically modified children, and the rights of artificial intelligence are all subjects raised by other characters, but never central to Clara's narrative or purpose. However, that narrative is why I recommend the book. Ishiguro slowly develops Clara's voice through her experience in a way that is particularly gratifying because she is an artificial intelligence. At the start of the story, Clara's only perspective is through a storefront and the knowledge that she is solar powered. So she and the other robots develop a worship of the sun that is carried through the novel. Being placed at the front of the store and having more time in the sun means that they'll be at peak power and be able to perform to the best of their abilities. When Josie's sickness makes itself evident, Clara pleads with the sun to provide her help to Josie. Similarly, when Clara arrives at Josie's home, she expects the housekeeper to fulfill the role of the store manager and instruct her on what to do, and is surprised to be met with antagonism and fear of obsolescence. The way Clara's cognizance is shaped by her experiences makes the developments in her character traceable, such that when she forms very emotional conclusions despite being an artificial intelligence, you can see their point of origin. Although the ending had me at a very divisive point between my head and my heart, Clara and the Sun is an ultimately optimistic novel with dystopian dressings. If you feel like you're in a place for an emotional read that skirts with the scarier directions of our society, I highly recommend it. Now, Giovanna will talk about the book The Children's Train by Viola Nardone.
Thank you, Kenji. The Children's Train by Viola Nardone is beautiful, touching, and well written. The author was born in Naples in 1974 and works as a high school Latin and Italian teacher. She holds a degree in literature and has worked in academic publishing as well. She is the author of 2 previous novels written in Italian. The Children's Train, Il Treno dei Bambini, was published in Italy in 2019 and has been translated into almost 30 languages. Released in the United States in 2021, it is a fictionalized novel based on true events that occurred after World War II between 1945 and 1952, when 70,000 children were transported from the South or Southern Italy to Northern Italy. The story is told through the eyes of 7-year-old Amerigo Speranza, who lives with his mother Antonietta in Naples. He is searching for his identity and hoping for a better life, thus his surname Speranza, which means hope in Italian. Food and new shoes become a rarity after the war, and Amerigo has to drop out of school to help his mother make ends meet. Then Italy's Communist Party approached struggling Neapolitan families with an offer. The children would be sent to Northern Italy to be cared for during the winter months with wealthier families and then returned to the South. Amerigo joins the train of children and he's placed with the Benvenuti family, Benvenuti meaning welcome, in Bologna, which is 292 miles and almost 5 hours away from his home. He is literally and figuratively transported. His new life includes school, violin lessons, and plenty of food. His world is undoubtedly better in the north, but the children of the Mezzogiorno, as they were known, are not meant to leave their parents permanently. The novel's most heartfelt conflict involves Amerigo's feelings about returning home to his mother and a life of poverty. A new world has opened for him that is far removed from his struggling hometown and neighbors. The novel jumps forward 40 years in time to Amerigo's adulthood, which satisfies the reader's curiosity about which life Amerigo chooses to follow. Amerigo was privileged to have the opportunity to leave Naples and its poverty behind, but it came at a cost to his mother, his community, and ultimately himself. Did taking that chance improve his life, or did it create a separation between him and everyone he loved? Translated from the Italian by Clarissa Botsford, The Children's Train explores heartbreaking decisions made by families during extremely challenging times. There are no easy answers, no villains, no heroes in this novel, which will appeal to fans of Italian author Elena Ferrante and American writer Christina Baker Klein, whose novel Orphan Train could be considered a parallel, fictionalized story of the U.S. train, which operated between 1853 and 1929, relocating about 200,000 orphaned, abandoned, or homeless children between the northern and southern states of America. So it's interesting to see how history repeats itself throughout the world. Nardone's fictionalized account of an extremely complicated social experiment will remain with the reader for a long time. I hope you'll give it a try. Next, Bob will talk about the book, Interpreter of Maladies by Jhumpa Lahiri. Bob?
Hi, thanks, Giovanna. Those 2 books sound really interesting. I actually read Remains of the Day by Ishiguro and absolutely loved it. It was a great movie too. So as Giovanna said, the book I'm talking about is called Interpreter of Maladies. It's a collection of short stories that was published in 1999. And I ordinarily don't read short stories, but I read this collection and it really stayed with me, especially 3 of the stories that I'm going to talk about later. Jhumpa Lahiri was born in London and she was raised in Rhode Island. The Interpreter of Maladies won the Pulitzer Prize. Her novel, The Namesake, which she wrote in 2003, was adapted as a film. She moved to Rome in 2011 and has since published 2 books of essays and a novel in Italian called Dove mi trovo. That was published in 2018. So as I said, I actually rarely read short stories. I prefer to immerse myself in a novel or a long nonfiction book. But again, this book really made a lasting impression on me. The stories are all set in India or the United States, in Cambridge, Massachusetts, or various unnamed Eastern Seaboard university towns. Most of the characters in the US are immigrants from India. Some of the stories are quite sad. Themes include estrangement, displacement, and marginalization. As they face difficulties, many of the characters do so with dignity and quiet strength. And while they're bittersweet, the stories are written with such subtlety, such eloquence, and such insight into human nature that they're very entertaining. A great pleasure to read. The story that's the most humorous is called This Blessed House. It's about newlyweds, and I believe they're outside Boston. They're in an arranged marriage. The husband's name is Sanjeev, and he's a very fastidious, kind of serious guy. He's an engineer, he's a graduate of MIT, and his wife is 180 degrees opposite to him. She's very artistic, she's very creative, she's very kind of flamboyant, very frivolous, and you can, even though this is unsaid, you can just feel Sanjeev's irritation at some of her eccentricities. And in the story, they've just moved into a new house. And as they're unpacking, they keep finding artifacts and tchotchkes that were left by the previous owners, who were apparently devout Christians. They find statues of the Blessed Virgin, they find statues of Jesus, they find very, very religious pictures and even large posters. And Sanjeev's first reaction is, well, we have to give these away, we're Hindus. And Twinkle, his wife Twinkle, says, no, she's fascinated by them. And she wants to decorate the house with them. She wants to put them on the mantelpiece and so forth. And Sanjeev is really upset by this, especially given the fact that they're about to have a housewarming party that a lot of his colleagues are going to come to. And he's afraid they're going to ask embarrassing questions about these. And they have a big fight about it. And at one point, Twinkle bursts into tears, and Sanjeev is taken aback. And he says, oh, you can keep them, you can keep them. And my take is that he is just so hopelessly in love with her that he's going to live with her eccentricities. The next story is called Sexy. It's about a young woman who's having an affair with a married man named Dev. And one afternoon, she agrees to babysit a little boy. And an innocent comment this little boy makes causes her to reevaluate her choices and reevaluate her relationship with Dev. The last story in the collection is called The Third and Final Continent. It's written in the first person by a guy who was born in India, moved to London when he was a young man, and then he moves to Cambridge because he got a job as a librarian at MIT. He's also in an arranged marriage, and he's waiting for his new bride to come to Massachusetts from India, and they really don't even know each other. So while he's waiting for her, he rents a room from a woman who's over 100. And these two characters are both displaced. His landlady is displaced from the past, and he's displaced from another culture. When his wife arrives, the narrator moves into an apartment with her, but they come back to visit the elderly landlady. And while they're visiting and chatting, the landlady looks at the narrator's new wife and says, she's a perfect lady. And the new married couple are amused by this, and they smile at each other for the first time in their relationship. They barely know each other. But that smile is a sign that they really are in love with each other, and their relationship deepens, and they actually have the healthiest marriage in the whole collection, and they make the best adjustment to life in the United States. While some of the characters in these stories are living with memories of traumatic or transformative events, the stories mostly describe ordinary moments in life. Lahiri leaves a lot unsaid. The reader is left to imagine what a character is thinking or the impact an experience might have had on them, or if they even yet recognize or understand that impact themselves. That ambiguity really resonated with me and is a large part of the reason that these stories have stayed with me so long. If you read these books that we've talked about, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear what you thought of them. And thank you so much for joining us, and stay well.